To provide more analysis, joining us from Moscow is Dr. Vincent Negorio, the head of the geopolitical department at Analytica for Intelligence, and from Bodrum, Mr. Ivan Us, advisor at the Ukraine National Center. Thank you both for joining me here on Think Tank. Let's start off with you, Dr. Negorio. Now, how does the Kremlin conceptuality justify its latest massive aerial barrages against Kyiv and the provocative tests that they've been doing in NATO airspace?
Good afternoon, first of all, to you and all your audience. Well, there is no justification. I would not use the word justification, but I would use the word strategy. This is a strategy that was quite highlighted in the last week. So we will see still an increase of attack, massive attack, as a result of, let me say, the end of another round of negotiation, the dreadlock of the Alaska consultation between Trump and Putin, and of course not occurring the bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin. That was evident that will never occur without the mediation of even other leaders. This is a strategy, and I think also that we have not to confuse and not to forget that the strategy of interfering, or for example, or entering the airspace from drones or let me say MiG and other aircraft, let me say Russian military aircraft in the NATO EU space, is an old practice that occurred already in the last years. We see now an escalation, but from the infotainment, European or Western infotainment, just to increase, let me say, the escalating.
But is it an escalation, or are they testing out how NATO countries may respond?
Let me say, I don't see it as an escalation, but I see it as a test rather than escalation. And it was a test in the past, and will be a test now, and will be a test in the future. Just a test of measure and test of control and test of response.
Okay, Mr. Us, now if we can get your opinion here. After the Russians sent out hundreds of drones that have targeted Kyiv, including the nuclear power plant, can Ukraine's new air defenses realistically counter the scale of these attacks?
Greetings to you, Riham. Greetings to Dr. Ligorio, and greetings to all audience. Riham, actually, this attack was one of the biggest, but, every time when we received new Russian attack, sometimes we think that it's bigger and bigger. It means that Russia constantly preserves this level of escalation and constantly increase it. And in Ukraine, we're more than sure that closer to the end of this year, we'll see the attack of 1,000 drones and rockets in one moment. Now it's less than 1,000. Nevertheless, it's, as for me, clear message that Russia didn't plan to stop this war, that Russia wants to continue this war. And the problem actually that all expectation that direct meeting between President Putin of Russia and President Zelensky of Ukraine can make some changes. No, President Putin don't want to make this meeting. He wants to win this war. That's why the war will continue. Thank you, Riham.
Okay, Mr. Us, if we can follow up there as well. I mean, do you think that this may possibly also be a shift in tactics towards, the war between Russia and Ukraine? Because obviously the Russians are absorbing tremendous losses on the ground. Maybe drones are the solution for them?
Riham, actually, drones is the most cheap attempt to attack your opponent, because if you compare the price of drone and price of rocket, of course, drone more cheaper. Then Russia really faced with enormous losses. Ukraine lose people too, but Russian losses is threefold larger approximately. So that's why for Russia, of course, they need to use more technical means of attack just for due to the fact that they need to economize their people. It's irony that Russia that never think about their human lives in whole Russian tradition, taking into account Soviet Union tradition, now they should think about the other means of attack because less than 1% of the territory that they annexed from Ukraine, if to be correct, 0.7% for last 1,000 days. It says for me the pressure for Russia that they should choose a new way of this war. And as this war of Russia against Ukraine becomes the probably first war in the world history, the war of drones, Russia tried to use it more and more. Thank you, Riham.
Okay, Dr. Ligoriou, do you agree there that Russia is not thinking about mediation or peace, and that Lavrov now signaling fall talks with Washington is just a tactic that Moscow is doing to stall diplomatic efforts and escalate the war?
No, I think that this is also, again, a tactic and a strategy. Russia is trying to stretch the negotiation pathway using both, let me say, new form of diplomacy, because the old form of diplomacy is completely dead, and we see what's happened in the last days, in the last weeks at United Nations General Assembly. And of course, Russia is trying to stretch by time and trying to gain more objective gain into the not just territorial, because it's very slow now. Now the winter is approaching in both the country, Russia and Ukraine, but just to eliminate more the stationary powers that are formed by the Ukrainian and his alliance on the ground. So it's just a form to try to, let me say, slow down the defense of Ukraine in order to gain and to stretch the territorial and ground advance for the future negotiation.
Okay, Mr. Urs, now if we can also have a look at Europe here. Now, Ukraine obviously has been in the trenches for quite a number of years now, but the Europeans are not used to this. Now, Europe's drone wall is considered a lifeline, not just for Ukraine, but for the Europeans as well. Or is this a signal that the West prefers shielding its own borders over the security of Kiev and its sovereignty, now that, they're seeing incursions into their own airspaces?
Riham, actually, as for Europe, Europe should understand that a war happening not far away. Europe actually sees this war happening in Europe. That's why the task for European countries to be more concentrated on the weapon production. Approximately a year and a half ago, that time Minister of Defense of the United Kingdom said a great phrase, that if someone thinks that the war is something in the history books, no. War in our reality that we see every day. And Europe, of course, should be ready for that. Europe should think about military production, increasing military production, think about increasing expenditures on the weapon, because for 3.5 years of full-scale war in Ukraine, European Union increased production of weapons only at 30%. We have a lot of historical examples when every country and union of the countries understanding that war is not far away, seriously increased production of weapons. Let's remind the Second World War period in the United States, that is practically no produced weapon, and they seriously increased the production after understanding that the war is extremely close. So now task for Europe to understand that actually this war touching them directly, that those provocations that we see for last months, both with drones in Poland, then Russian fighter jets in Estonia, now drones in Sweden, in Finland. So I don't know what country of European Union will be today. Actually, Romania was under something like saw Russian drones on their territory. So if Europe will not react on everything happened in all previous times, I think that it will be a big mistake of NATO, because now in Ukraine we have a joke that if you try to understand what NATO actually means, NATO means North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But in current reality, we have a feeling that NATO means North Atlantic Teamed Organization, or scaring organization that is scared to make response. Now I'm in Bodrum in Turkey, and in 2016 it was a good example when Turkey said that if Russian fighter jet violated Turkey airspace, they shut down it. Russia violated, Turkey shut down Russian fighter jet. Whether the war starts between Russia and Turkey? No, because Turkey immediately used the fourth article of NATO, and it was consultation, and partners of Turkey said that it will be war between Russia and NATO, and Russia decided that it's better to stop escalation. That's why if NATO shut down Russian airplane, it will be not the act of war. It will be act directed on stopping the provocation, what we are waiting for, but we see lack of, let's call it so, will of Europe to do that. Nevertheless, if Europe will not do that, the provocation will happen every day, and I'm not sure that Europe really need it. Thank you, Rihan.
Okay, Dr. Ligoriou, now, does Russia's view of Europe's drone wall as a defensive shield, or does it view as a provocation and, justifying further, strikes on these so-called, defensive shields? Or do you agree with Mr. Us there that, there has to be some sort of decisive action from these NATO countries?
Well, the wall is seen as the only one political response that the European Union is able to provide at the United States. So what I mean that a lot of defensive initiatives proposed at European Union level didn't find a consensus. So the only form of defense or only form of consensus that has been found around all the member states is around this, let me say, drone wall, yeah? And I see, and also Russians see this as more as, not as you say, a provocation or, let me say, more than a defense, but just a political move. And of course, I would like also to integrate something that my colleague Ivan just said. The context was different in 2016 rather than now. So if any MiG would be shut down on NATO territory or European Union territory, I think that Russia would and will have to respond in a different way, because Russia is considering already that there is a confrontation on the ground with NATO. Let me say hybrid confrontation, but also logistic confrontation. So I think that the response would be quite different.
They would consider it an act of war then, if this does happen in 2025.
It could be considered. Don't forget that Russia leadership is quite divided between, let me say, the hardcore leadership and, let me say, more peaceful and liberal leadership. So we have to understand on the balance of these two on the plate, who will win in, let me say, in the decision-making process, if they will consider an act of war or, let me say, an incident as occurred in these days on the other side.
Okay, Mr. Us, now we've seen Trump, be very wishy-washy when it comes to the Ukraine issue. Now we're seeing Trump say that Ukraine can win, yet he's refusing long-term security guarantees. How can Kyiv translate rhetoric into real deterrence, given that Trump has long been known to go back and forth?
So, of course, for Ukraine now, when you're talking about Donald Trump's statements, it's an interesting change of Trump rhetoric, because if we return to previous periods from the actually Donald Trump inauguration, he liked to say that, oh, Ukraine is losing this war, Russia will win it, and it was constant repeat of this phrase. Now, after the, first of all, Trump's speech in the United Nations organization, then after especially Donald Trump post in Truth Social, his personal social network, when he wrote a phrase that Ukraine could return its territory and even go further. So for the first time, Donald Trump said the phrase Ukraine can return its land. Furthermore, they could do more. And as for me, it changed of attitude to the situation. I talk a lot with people who actually try to understand such change, and people who have a meeting in the United Kingdom with the local management explained to me that one of the main arguments that played in favor of such change was the fact that Donald Trump understands that Russia's success for last 1,000 days was, as I said before, 0.7 of territory.
But I mean, Trump has been known to, go back and forth when it comes to his ideas and his rhetoric in general. Don't the Ukrainians want some sort of guarantees that, the U.S. will continue to back the Ukrainians?
Reham, of course, the main problem of Trump that he can change his mind in 24 hours.
Yes, exactly.
That's why, Trump has, as we joke, several Fridays during 1 week. So it means that today he said that Ukraine could do that in 24 hours or in 48 hours, he can say, oh no, Ukraine is losing this war. That's why Ukraine needs not only words. Ukraine needs real support, military support. Ukraine needs to think more about air defense, not only Patriots. Patriots cost a lot of money. We need drones that will destroy drones. It will be better. Because, for example, when it was drone attack on Poland, yes, Poland said that it was a mistake, but 23 drones by mistake, excuse me, I don't believe in that. And they used very expensive rockets to destroy those drones. And Ukraine said, guys, you should economize on anti-drones programs. You should think about special drones who will use artificial intelligence to destroy the other drones. And it will be much easier and much more cheaper than the expensive rockets. So that's why, of course, we need not only words, we need real support, both in economic pressure on Russia, because if you look at the map of Russia, of the regions with the problems of fuel, where there is practically no fuel at all, you see that it's a large part of Russia. And ironically, it's not the western part that under Ukrainian drone attacks. It's eastern part where Ukraine never attacked, but they have no fuel, according to my colleagues, economists. They said that due to the fact that Russia sells its oil to China. As for me, it's due to the fact that Russia economized budget sources for supporting persons who selling oil and for preserving prices inside Russia. And that's why, as they economize money on that, they have no oil at all. Nevertheless, I think that this pressure should be, as I said, economic way, sanctions, and Donald Trump should impose new sanctions, because after his start of his presidency, there is no direct sanction against Russia. Only one sanction against India for purchasing Russian oil, but it should be sanction against Russia too, and there should be control over those sanctions. And of course, military pressure, giving arms to Ukraine, giving more and more technical meanings. I don't know what's happening with the talks about Tomahawk rockets, but nevertheless, it's very good that we have the discussion. Probably from the discussion, we can go to actual receive of that rockets and use them at this war, and it will be clear sign to Russia that let's stop this war, or this Tomahawk actually will be given to Ukraine and they flew to your actually country. Thank you, Reham.
Okay, Dr. Ligoriou, if we can get your opinion here as well. Now, given the strategic ambiguity of the U.S. administration's recent pivot, is Moscow exploiting the perceived vacuum in NATO leadership to fracture the European unity before the wall is built?
I think that something will be done, and something will be, let me say, is already into the operation, let me say, in underground. Russia is constantly trying to use the Roman, let me say, strategy divide et impera, and of course the strategy of providing energy resources to some of the European Union countries that without that they will have huge problems. So we think about Slovakia, Hungary, but I think that also other countries, they would like to restore a kind of relationship at this level. I think that this is one of the strategy, seeing that winter is approaching, economic crisis risk is always behind the corner, and they see that the help from the United States is quite little. The United States are quite trying to let me say, school leaders, EU leaders, so they see a huge advantage from Russians see a huge advantage from this perspective. So there is always a room to dividend impera, and this is seen also in the defense strategy that is never find a consensus among the 27 members.
Are they basically betting that Trump is someone who doesn't make his mind up very easily?
Well, Trump is quite conditional mind. According to my colleague present at the meeting in London, they say that King Charles III tried to condition it or even manipulate Trump in terms of change of strategy toward Russia. That's why somebody said that this shift of rhetoric came just after the state visit in the UK. We don't know 100%, of course, because these are, let me say, corridor rumors. But we know that Trump is changed his mind quite easy. We know that tomorrow anything else would happen. We know that these things is occurring even in the internal policy, national policy of the United States. Russians are very aware of that. So they never trust, let me say, this administration in full toward the narrative and the rhetoric of the past. Always Russians try to fight the devil that they know. And Trump is not the devil that they know.
Yes.
And it was evident in the first administration and in the latest administration.
Okay, Mr. Us, now after the latest drone incursions, does the proposed EU drone wall offer Kyiv some sort of tangible or reliable security guarantee? Or is this just merely a costly technological stopgap for NATO's eastern flank?
Riham, actually, I think that Europe, first of all, should invest money in situation, because when they make a lot of words about the fact that, we make this wall of drones, but excuse me, it's only words. You should do something. This activity requires some research. You should spend money on that. You, first of all, should direct money in your budgetary expenditures. Now we know that Germany changed finally the rule that expenditures on national security is not counted to national debt. I think that whole European Union countries should make the same step, that thinking that their security is more important than the debt of their country. And one of the main problem of Europe is, for me, the fact that they decided not to think a lot about their security, redirect this question to the United States of America. And now when Donald Trump said that he cannot defend Europe finally understands that they need to do that themselves.
Yes. I'm sorry, I have to cut you off there, but we're running out of time. That was Mr. Ivan Us, advisor at the Ukrainian National Center, and Dr. Vincent Ligorio, head of the Geopolitical Department of Analytica Intelligence. Thank you both for joining me here on Think Tank. And as skies turn into battlefields, Europe's drone wall may shield borders, but can it save the alliance? This brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils a very complex world we live in. I'm Rehan Morsi. Thank you for watching.